cases. And in between, I will be asking few questions to the students which are over here. So now let us go to the first slide. So this is liver, which consists of liver parenchyma consisting of hepatocytes, and it has biliary tree. This biliary tree is extrahepatic biliary tree and intrahepatic biliary tree. You can see over here is common bile duct, which fans out within liver parenchyma into left hepatic duct, right hepatic duct, and further divides and go to the reach almost to the surface. So this is the normal histology, and the gallbladder where bile is stored routinely. Now coming to liver biopsy techniques. Liver biopsy is an invasive procedure and it has its own limitations. So it is not the biopsy like endoscopic biopsy. The pathologists, they say repeat biopsy. So it is difficult to re-biopsy the liver. So it is an invasive procedure. It carries its own risk of abdominal pain, abdominal hemorrhage, though it is very, very less than 0.5% of patients, but it is an invasive procedure. It requires skilled operations. There are various types of liver biopsy, and this liver biopsy technique depends on indications, risk, and benefits of individual patients. So various types of liver biopsy, the most common being percutaneous needle core biopsy. Another is transjugular biopsy, wedge biopsy, and the newer method is endoscopic ultrasound guided liver biopsy. Now, this is an example of percutaneous liver biopsy using this gun. And if you do liver biopsy under ultrasound guidance, it has greatest yield. But remember that liver biopsy represents approximately 1 in 50,000 of entire liver. And hence, it has its own sampling errors. So the clinicians as well as pathologists, we all must know about the sampling errors which can occur in liver biopsy. Now, there are certain contraindications of this percutaneous liver biopsy, which is very commonly done. And these two main contraindications are hemorrhagic diathesis and tense ascites. I am not going into details about each and every type of liver biopsy, but this is the most common type of liver biopsy. And this biopsy is wedge liver biopsy, in which pathologist, we receive a wedge liver tissue. And why I have included this slide over here is whenever pathologist is reporting this liver biopsy, we have to keep in mind that whatever is seen here blue is liver capsule. This is Masson's trichrome stain. So this is liver capsule, and these are certain fibrous septa which go within liver capsule, and this is normal liver histology. Always few fibrous septa going from capsule into adjacent liver parenchyma. So this is a normal liver histology. You should not misinterpret this as liver fibrosis. So now coming to question number 1 is, which type of bile ducts are included in percutaneous liver biopsy? Should we go to Yoshita? You would like to answer this question? Which type of bile ducts are included in percutaneous liver biopsy? Is the most common liver biopsy. So my question is, which type of bile ducts are included? Type meaning small, large, medium size. So which type of bile ducts?
All, ma'am.
All? Then Ankita, you would like to answer this question?
Ma'am, interlobular bile duct.
All right. Momita, what is your opinion?
Ma'am, intrahepatic.
Intrahepatic. Obviously, these are intrahepatic, but in intrahepatic, would you like to say medium size, small, or larger ducts?
Ma'am, larger ones.
Larger ducts. Then Meghparna.
Ma'am, I think it's the small and medium size that would be included, and the large one would be excluded. Large size, I mean.
Yes. Priyanka, what is your idea about
Small ducts and the ductules would be included in the percutaneous liver biopsy and not the larger duct.
Yes, you are right that this is, can you see this right figure here? Figure on the right hand side.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, so liver biopsy is percutaneous liver biopsy, and hence in the liver biopsy, usually you do not see larger ducts from here. So these are smaller ducts, or these are interlobular ducts that are included in the liver biopsy. Except when liver biopsy is done close to hilum, then only you have medium to large ducts, bile ducts, which are present in the portal area. So normally in the liver biopsy, you have interlobular or terminal bile ducts that are included in liver biopsy. Now we'll go to the next slide. Now this is normal liver histology, normal liver biopsy, which you can see over here, portal area and a nice linear course. You can see hepatocytes, then hepatic venule and the portal areas, and the higher magnification. This is higher magnification showing portal area. Now, normally the liver in liver histology, this is divided, liver biopsy is divided into 3 zones. This is zone 1, which is portal or periportal area, or it is also called as portal triad. Then zone 3 is hepatic venule or terminal venule, and zone 2, this is in between 1 and 2, which consist of only hepatocytes. So you have cords of hepatocytes, which are separated by sinusoids, which contain sometimes RBCs. Now let us come back to this next question. Now my next question is looking at this, what is the normal flow of blood and normal flow of bile? Anyone would like to answer first? So considering this histology, which is the normal histology, what is the normal flow of blood from zone 3 to zone 1, or from zone 1 to zone 3, or from 2 to 3? So what is normal flow of blood and normal flow of bile? Yoshita, you would like to answer?
Flow is from zone 1 to zone 3, ma'am, and bile is from zone 3 to zone 1, ma'am.
Excellent. Good answer. So normal flow, for normal flow, this is one figure which I have taken from the net, showing this is zone 1 area or portal triad. As I said, portal triad has 3 structures. One is portal vein, hepatic artery, and the bile duct. So this is zone 1. And on right hand side is zone 3, which is hepatic venule or terminal hepatic venule. And blood flows, you can see this arrow, blood flows from zone 1 to zone 3, and bile flows exactly opposite direction from zone 3 to zone 1. So why this is important? Because you can see over here again, blood flows from 1 to 3 and bile flows from 3 to 1. This is important because periportal zone having highest concentration of oxygen, and it has all highest activity, and while zone 3 is most susceptible to ischemia and toxic injury. So any drug related or ischemic injury is, we can see changes mainly in zone 3 as compared to zone 1. And rest all like features of chronic hepatitis, etc., are all concentrated in zone 1. So this is the higher magnification of portal area. Whenever you are evaluating any liver biopsy, this is most important area where you have to see each and every structure. That is, this is hepatic artery and a branch of hepatic artery. And artery has always some amount of muscle. So this is always circular in shape. As against, this is vein. This is elongated, oval shaped, because it doesn't have muscle around it. And the third structure in triad means artery, vein, and bile duct. So this is bile duct, and bile duct is lined by biliary type of cuboidal epithelium. Another important feature here is bile duct always accompanies similar caliber of that artery. It is all, these two things are always together. This anatomical relation is very, very important, because there are certain diseases in which you have loss of bile duct, and in which only artery remains alone. And that condition, we call it as ductopenia, where we have loss of bile duct in more than 50% of portal areas. So this normal structure in portal triad is very important. You may have more than one bile duct, as you can see over here. This is another bile duct, this is another bile duct, but it always accompanies similar caliber of that of artery. Then normal portal area can have little amount of connective tissue. This connective tissue increases as you go from smaller portal area to larger portal area. And these are normal hepatocytes, which are radiating cords of hepatocytes. Now coming to larger portal area. This is a large portal area where you can see more of connective tissue, and the connective tissue is around, this is artery, this is bile duct. Connective tissue can be around artery as well as around bile duct. So do not say that this is periductal fibrosis, because this is larger portal area. So this is how you have to assess portal fibrosis. As we go ahead, I will show you certain more examples. So this is normal portal area. Again, you can see over here artery, bile duct, another smaller bile duct, and the vein. So this is normal histology and Masson's trichrome here. Now coming to the concept of limiting plate. What do you mean by limiting plate? This limiting plate is an imaginary line. This line is always an imaginary, and it is between portal connective tissue and adjacent liver parenchyma. So this is called as limiting plate. Now another example, this is also called as limiting plate. Again, duct, artery, and the vein, and this is limiting plate. Why it is significant is because in cases of chronic hepatitis, you have inflammation in the portal area. Sometimes these inflammatory cells, they spill over and they go to adjacent liver parenchyma, and that time we say that there is destruction of limiting plate, which is also called as interphase activity. So this is the significance of limiting plate. Now coming to normal hepatocytes. These are normal hepatocytes which are having single cell radiating cords, and in between hepatocytes, the spaces which you can see over here, these are sinusoids. And these sinusoids normally, they either contain occasional RBCs or they are empty. And these sinusoids, they are lined by endothelial cells, and you can see sometimes Kupffer cells within sinusoid. So this is the normal histology. Now going to special stains on liver biopsy. Most common special stains in liver biopsy, what we do it routinely, and these special stains are Masson's trichrome, reticulin stain, which is a silver stain, Prussian blue stain. This is mainly for iron. PAS diastase stain, to see whether there are PAS diastase positive granules or globules, and Orsin stain. What about ISC markers? These are some of the ISC markers which are routinely used in liver biopsy. However, these markers, first three markers, are mainly used in case of liver SOLs. And the marker which is used in a non-neoplastic liver, the most common is CK7 or CK19 to highlight bile ducts. So now let us see the examples. So this is Masson's trichrome. Both these are examples of Masson's trichrome. Here, counter stain is in blue and here it is green. So this is how fibrosis starts in portal area, and it extends into adjacent portal area or zone 3 or hepatic venule. And this Masson trichrome is stains, it consists of type 1 type of collagen. And this is reticulin. Okay, Dr. Sagnik has some
Sorry,
questions.
ma'am, I just had a question. Ma'am, for the portal triad, is it common like to have all three components of the portal triad present for all biopsies? Because we had this one case of ductopenia where there were less, but then the pathologist told us that it is common that they are not seen in all these samples.
Yes, after all, this is three-dimensional structures. So maybe there are one or two portal areas you may not see, but you have to assess overall portal areas.
Right.
So that is why adequacy of liver biopsy is important. At least 10 portal areas should be there in liver biopsy. In 10 portal areas, if you don't see all the three structures in one portal area, that's okay. Because
Okay.
after all, this is three-dimensional structure.
Right. Thank you, ma'am.
So now let us go to another special stain, that is reticulin stain. So this reticulin It gives supportive network, and this reticulin has little more advantage over Masson's trichrome because it tells you liver cell thickness. As I said earlier, liver cell cords are single cell thick. Whenever you have regenerating hepatocytes, you have double cell or triple cell thickness. Then this is also important in collapsed liver parenchyma, in NRH, and well-differentiated hepatocellular carcinoma. Now, other special stains is Prussian blue. Prussian blue is very good special stain to judge about iron overload. Then PAS diastase, PAS with diastase, and you can see these globules in PAS diastase. And when you see these globules, you may think of alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, but here I would like to say that presence of these globules on PAS diastase doesn't mean always that this is a case of alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. After all, the diagnostic test for alpha-1 AT is PIZZ, is a genotype. So this is about PAS diastase. Now here is the Orsin stain. So both these are Orsin stains. And here comes the next question. What is utility of Orsin stain in liver biopsy interpretation? So Ankita or Momita can answer. You start with these A, B, C. What is A, what is B, and what is C? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Orphan is used for hepatitis B antigens.
Yes. So what is A? Is this hepatitis B seen in A, B, or C? Which of these? Megparna? Megparna, can you hear me? No, she's not there. Priyanka?
Yeah.
Would you
Ma'am,
like
I-
to answer?
Ma'am, I
A
think
is
it was
hepatitis
A.
B.
Ma'am, I think A, it's hepatitis B. As we can see, I think it's the ground glass appearance of the hepatocytes.
Yeah, you are very good. Absolutely correct. What about B and C?
B
Ma'am,
and-
copper in copper is also get stained in Orsin.
So which one, B or C? And then C is, suppose you say B, then C is for what? Yoshita? Or any one of you would like to say, what about B and C? No answer?
Probably, ma'am, I'm assuming that it's B, which is linked with the copper associated protein.
Yes.
And then C, I'm confused.
All right, we can go ahead. So you all are correct that A is for hepatitis B surface antigen, where you can see here, these all three are copper stain. And you can see here, nucleus is not stained. Nucleus remains unstained. So this is all surface antigen. It stains surface of the nucleus. So this indicates hepatitis B integration into hepatocytes. So this is for HBsAg. Now this is copper. As against this is completely different picture. Here you can see granularity. This is more of a fine granularity around nucleus, while you can see here, this is coarse, these are coarse granules which are present within hepatocytes in the periportal area. And C is old connective tissue. This Orsin also stains old connective tissue. So these are three uses of Orsin. HBsAg, hepatitis B surface antigen, copper and copper associated protein, and old connective tissue. So this is the stain which is used for these three things. Of course, for connective tissue, we use mainly Masson's and trichrome, but definitely this helps in old connective tissue staining. Now let us go to the next. So coming to evaluation of liver biopsy, whenever we are evaluating liver biopsy, we have to see these three zones, zone 1, 2, 3, portal triad, we have to see duct, artery, and the vein. Then whenever there is any inflammation, what type of inflammatory cells, where are these inflammatory cells, zone 1 or zone 3 or zone 2, and what are different grades of inflammation, mild, moderate, and severe. Coming to fibrosis, I will deal with it very soon in details. And then if steatosis is present, cholestasis is present, or any other findings, we have to mention while evaluating liver biopsy. And then while evaluating all these things, we determine the pattern. So we actually give pattern to the clinicians: hepatic pattern, steatotic pattern, biliary pattern, various fibrotic patterns, and neoplastic patterns. So depending on these patterns and any additional features, we have to correlate with clinical findings and give the final diagnosis. Now, there are various patterns. As I said, I am going to deal with it only hepatic pattern today, and that also chronic hepatic pattern, because otherwise this is very, very vast. So other patterns are vascular patterns, granulomatous liver disease, drug-induced liver disease, storage disease, especially in pediatric age group, biliary atresia, neonatal patients, and various pediatric liver disease. So these are various patterns of liver disease. Now, so we are concentrating mainly on hepatic patterns, especially chronic hepatic pattern, and I have excluded rest all patterns. And what do you mean by chronic hepatic pattern? The definition of first chronic hepatitis is persistence of inflammation with either elevated aminotransferases or viral markers more than 6 months is the definition of chronic hepatitis. Why it is important? Because patients of chronic hepatitis, they develop liver fibrosis, various grades of liver fibrosis. So they can land up in development of liver cirrhosis, and some of them, they can progress to development of hepatocellular carcinoma. So this is the significance of chronic hepatitis. So coming to the next question, what is the etiology for chronic hepatitis? So who would like to answer first? Etiology for chronic hepatitis.
Hepatitis B, hepatitis C infection.
B.
Then, ma'am,
Ma'am, there are viral etiology, hepatitis B, C.
Yes.
It could be B. And autoimmune hepatitis, then metabolic diseases like Wilson disease, alpha 1, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and then there are drug-induced and alcohol-related.
Excellent. So this slide shows that all of them, they can give rise to chronic hepatitis. All these diseases can give rise to chronic hepatitis. And as per definition, it is more than 6 months. And all these etiologies can progress to liver fibrosis. So now coming to liver biopsy features in chronic hepatitis. So these are mainly 3 cardinal features of chronic hepatitis, which you see in liver biopsy. And these 3 features are seen in almost all etiologies, whatever you have enlisted just now. So number 1 is portal inflammation. Number 2, hepatocyte injury. And this hepatocyte injury usually starts in periportal areas, and progressive fibrosis and cirrhosis. Now let us go to liver biopsy. You can see over here, this is a linear core, and you can see one portal area, another portal area, and there is a lot of inflammation, and these are adjacent hepatocytes. This is higher magnification showing bile duct, then artery, vein. So this is portal area. Again, some ducts are seen, and lot of inflammation, inflammatory cells, mainly lymphocytes, and these inflammatory cells are extending outside portal area. So again, still higher magnification, you can see beautiful portal area with inflammation, lots of inflammation, which is going outside and extending into adjacent liver parenchyma, and we call it as interface activity, which I have explained it to you few minutes back. Again, interface activity, which used to be called earlier as piecemeal necrosis. Here you can see necrose. You can see 1 by 1 hepatocytes, which show necrotic changes, that loss of nuclei, etc. And then it is, you can see inflammatory cells which are going outside liver parenchyma and interphase activity. And these inflammatory cells are predominantly lymphocytes. You have variable amounts of plasma cells. Occasional, you can get eosinophils within portal area. Now, these patients of chronic hepatitis, they progress to various types of fibrosis. So this is one type of fibrosis. You can still see that this is portal area, duct, and somewhere artery. So this is portal fibrosis, which is extending outside, so going into periportal area. This is zone 3, and you can see fibrosis here. This is perisinusoidal fibrosis. And if you see lower pictures, left-hand side, you can see a periportal fibrosis, some fibrous septa which are going away from portal area. And on right-hand side, you can see liver cirrhosis. So Priyanka, you have any questions about this?
Not a question, ma'am, but in the chat box, they're saying the cursor is not being like they want you to use the cursor. Many
I
people
know
have
I'm using my this cursor only. I'm using pointer. I'm not able to get, but cursor I'm using.
they're not able to see, ma'am.
Okay, I will then now say right and left and lower and upper figures. All right. So this is about various patterns of liver fibrosis. So liver fibrosis is an abnormal increase in collagen deposition in response to chronic hepatitis, which can progress to liver cirrhosis. And when patient develops liver cirrhosis, then comes further complications such as portal hypertension and associated complications. Now you can see two figures. On left-hand side is normal liver, where you can see portal area, zone 1, zone 3, and in between hepatocyte, absolutely normal, no inflammation, no fibrosis. As against on right-hand side, you can see extensive fibrosis and almost development of cirrhotic nodules. So this is an example of liver cirrhosis. So left-hand side, compare left-hand side versus right-hand side. Left-hand side is normal liver and right-hand side is cirrhotic liver. Now, these patients of chronic hepatitis, there is scoring system for inflammation and fibrosis. This scoring system is called as hepatic activity index. And this is just to give you diagrammatic presentation of grading, scoring for grade. Grade means necroinflammation. A is inflammation restricted to portal area. Here it is extending beyond. On B it is extending beyond the portal area. C still has gone outside portal area, and 4 is there is extensive inflammation, periportal inflammation, even reaching up to zone 3. But what is important here for chronic hepatitis is stage of fibrosis. So these are 4 stages of fibrosis. F1 is portal fibrosis, that is slightly increase in connective tissue within portal area. F2 is periportal fibrosis, few fibrous tags which go away from portal area. Some of them, they try to reach another portal area. F3, as you can see, there are fibrous septa going from one portal area to another, and from one portal area to hepatic vein. While stage 4 fibrosis is development of liver cirrhosis. Now, I would like to say here that there are various scoring systems for this fibrosis. And now the question is which scoring system we should use. There is a Nodel scoring system, a Ishaq scoring system. There are several scoring systems with several ranges. But I prefer 0 to 4, where 4 is cirrhosis. So you can use any scoring system in which you are comfortable and your hepatologist is comfortable. Now going to the next figure. Now the question is, this is the liver biopsy with fibrosis, starting with left-hand side to the right-hand side. Would you like to score this liver biopsy? Ankita, would you like to say extreme left about fibrosis in this liver biopsy? Extreme left.
Ma'am, there's no fibrosis.
Excellent. So there is no fibrosis. This is nice linear core, no inflammation, no fibrosis.
Yes, ma'am.
Yoshita, on extreme right, what is the score for this fibrosis? Extreme right.
Cirrhosis, ma'am.
Yes, perfect. So this is cirrhosis. Now, the middle two. Meghparna, would you like to say on left hand, second left? This one. The second left. What is this core of fibrosis?
Ma'am, there's portal fibrosis,
Yes.
but without any septa. Like there's only portal fibrosis, the left second one.
Yeah, little bit somewhere thin fibrous, thin septa. Now from right hand side, second right hand side.
Ma'am, that one is portal fibrosis with
Yes.
with the broad septa.
Bridging fibrosis. I would like to say that this is thin septa and this is bridging fibrosis. And this is development of liver cirrhosis, which is extreme right. So here now this is F0 fibrosis. No fibrosis at all. Extreme right is liver cirrhosis. And other two, F1, F2, these are this is pre-cirrhotic stage where liver biopsy plays important role. This is all because now radiologists have gone beyond they are running before pathologists, or they have crossed the role of pathologists, and they have various non-invasive techniques to determine fibrosis, like for example FibroScan. So these non-invasive techniques, because liver biopsy is invasive technique, so non-invasive techniques are there which can confidently say that there is no fibrosis or there is liver cirrhosis. While these two stages, these non-invasive techniques can go sometimes wrong. For example, patient is obese. In that case, the non-invasive technique can mislead with you the degree of fibrosis. So this is the role, here is the role of liver biopsy. Now a question to Dr. Sagnik, is this statement right that this F1 to F3 fibrosis, sometimes, not in all cases, but in some cases, the non-invasive technique sometimes can give rise to false positive or negative interpretation of fibrosis?
Yes, ma'am. So, just as a primer to everybody, because in today's world, you see a lot of patients coming with FibroScan reports. And mostly when you see pathology slides, you have a clinical history which is written by the clinician, right? So your interpretation is to a certain extent biased by what the physician has mentioned on his report. So it becomes very important that you can also independently understand what a FibroScan report actually tells you. So when you put a FibroScan probe, it is just like looks very similar to an ultrasound probe, except that it has a very small rounded tip at the end. It basically sends sound waves through the liver, and when the sound wave comes back, it detects what is the stiffness. So the stiffer the tissue, the more the sound wave that will be reflected back to your machine. That is the basic concept. So we assume that stiff tissue is equal to fibrous tissue. So all the sound that is coming back is because of liver fibrosis. However, there will be several conditions where the liver parenchyma may appear stiff without fibrosis. For example, if you have inflamed liver tissue, anything that causes edema within the cells and causes the cells to dilate. So any inflammation, any kind of congestion secondary to cardiac diseases, even post meals when the hepatic blood flow through the portal vein is increased, all of these conditions increase edema within the liver. And FibroScan in these conditions will appear to be high without the presence of significant fibrosis. And you have to be careful while interpreting this. So you often ask for the LFT, you check the OTPT of these patients. You might find they have raised OTPT more than 2-3 times normal. So you might understand that, okay, the FibroScan may be elevated, but you may not find very high grades of fibrosis on the biopsy.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sagnik, for your valuable input. So I think we'll go ahead. Now, this is another example of liver fibrosis. Figure A is showing liver biopsy. Again, this is cirrhotic liver. B also is showing cirrhotic liver. So my question is, what is the difference between A and B fibrosis with clinical significance? Momita, would you like to answer? Priyanka? They're not there. Mekparana, you are there. Can you answer this question? Difference between the two fibrosis with clinical significance. No?
Ma'am,
With reference to fibrous septa, now this is the clue. With reference to fibrous septa, what is the difference between A and B? with clinical significance.
Ma'am, in figure A, we can see there are few matlab fibrous septa, thin and broad also. But in B, matlab
In
fibrous
A,
septa is much more.
the
Yes.
fibrosis is very thin septa, whereas in B, there is thickening of the fibrous septa.
Yes,
with
you're right.
increased.
So in figure A, the fibrous septa are very, very thin. As against B, fibrous septa are very, very thick. So the clinical significance is thickness of fibrous septa. It reflects hepatic vein portal gradient, pressure gradient. And if you think of this figure A, these fibrous septa are thin. And now we have concept about regression of fibrosis. Maybe these are cases which can show maybe fibrosis regression after certain whatever treatment they are undergoing. So these patients are likely to show regression as compared to B, where the fibrous septa are very, very thick. So the answer here is the presence of wide fibrous septa is associated with portal pressure with worse clinical outcome. Now going to another staging system for liver fibrosis. This is 4A, 4B, middle one is 4B and 4C on right. So this is another system for scoring for liver fibrosis in case of chronic hepatitis. And this 4 is all, these are all examples of liver cirrhosis. In 4A, what you can see is the fibrous septa are very thin and the hepatic nodules are broad or the larger nodules. As against B and C, here the hepatic nodules are moderate size with definitely increased fibrous septa as compared to 4A and 4C. Here you have extensive fibrosis and fibrous septa are thicker where hepatic nodules have become smaller. And this scoring system is given by Lennec. So this is Lennec scoring system of fibrosis, which depends on thickness of fibrous septa and size of cirrhotic nodules. Now, these patients of chronic hepatitis, some of them, they land up in development of hepatocellular carcinoma. So you have seen all these differential diagnoses of chronic hepatitis. You have given these differential diagnoses, usually not A and E. Very few patients of A and E, they land up in chronic hepatitis. But remember that every etiology of all these etiologies, they have characteristic histology, as I said, portal inflammation, necrosis, and fibrosis. But in addition, they have some common features of chronic hepatitis. Now, let us go to case number 1. This was 45 years male who was HbSAg positive. And as all of you know, that hepatitis B lands up in, it is a chronic liver disease. And the main histology is portal inflammation, inflammatory cells are lymphocytes, variable plasma cells, and sometimes you can have variable fibrosis. So this is a classical picture of hepatitis B positive histology. In addition, what are other features you see in HbSAg positive patients? Yeah, before going to that, I will come to that little later. But we have excellent diagnostic serological tests to diagnose hepatitis B patients. We have HbSAg, we have various hepatitis B antibodies, and we have HBV DNA. So these are the serological tests which are used for diagnosis of hepatitis B patients. And the other histological features which I'm going to show you in next few slides. So the question here is, what is diagnosis over here and what is differential diagnosis? Can anybody answer? This is very simple slide. Yoshita, would you like to answer? And
Hepatocytes,
you can concentrate towards the arrow, both the arrows.
ground glass hepatocytes.
Very good. So these are ground glass hepatocytes where you can see the cytoplasm. These are normal as compared to that. The other hepatocytes are normal hepatocytes, and whatever is arrow indicating ground glass hepatocytes where the cytoplasm is finely granular. The nucleus may be pushed to the periphery, the upper arrow, the lower arrow, the nucleus has almost disappeared. So these are all ground glass hepatocytes. And the next question is, what is differential diagnosis? If you see such ground glass hepatocytes, she has said is ground glass hepatocytes, the answer is correct. But what about the differential diagnosis? Ankita?
Most
Diabetes, in diabetes mellitus, the patient we can see these.
Diabetes, you don't see ground glass cells. You see more of a glycogenated nuclei. You can see steatosis. So not the ground glass hepatocytes. Momita? Ankita is there. Would you like to answer?
Uh,
Differential diagnosis of ground glass cells.
it's most commonly seen in hepatitis B,
Yes,
and it can also be seen in case of drug-induced liver injury
very
or
good.
in case of glycogen storage disorders or alpha-1 antitrypsin.
No. Alpha 1 is characterized by those globules. So the differential diagnosis here is hepatitis B infection, Laffoura's disease, fibrinogen storage, cyanide toxicity, and various drugs, as you said. But whenever you have biopsy, you see ground glass cells, and your clinical history is patient is B positive, then the diagnosis becomes straight away that ground glass hepatocytes. Then other histological features, what you may see in patients with hepatitis B positive patients are these sanded nuclei. You can see here sanded nuclei. You can, on left hand side, the picture is showing sanded nuclei which represent core antigen, hepatitis B core antigen. On right hand side, what you can see is large cell change. As you can see here on right hand side, upper right hand side figure, the normal hepatocytes are below, and you can see large cell change on the upper hepatocytes. And then fibrosing cholestatic hepatitis. This is not common, but the rare complication of hepatitis B, which is also seen in hepatitis C. So these are all various features of histological features you may see in patients with hepatitis B infection. And these features, they all depend on there are various clinical phases of hepatitis B. That is, for example, this ground glass cells you see in asymptomatic B carriers. Patient is active, then you see these patient the portal inflammation, etc. So the histological features, they all depend on various phases of hepatitis B infection. Now coming to hepatitis C infection, which is also a form of chronic hepatitis. Hepatitis B, hepatitis C, they are the first two examples of chronic hepatitis. In hepatitis C, as I said, the common feature of hepatitis is portal inflammation. So you may find lymphoid aggregate in patients with hepatitis C, or some of the patients with hepatitis C, especially genotype 3, you may find some amount of steatosis. So this is an example of hepatitis C. But again, for hepatitis C, we have excellent serological diagnostic methods. Like hepatitis B, C also has excellent serological methods such as anti-HCV positivity and HCV RNA. So whenever you have the request for liver biopsy, it always comes with anti-HCV positivity. So the next question is, liver biopsy indicated for primary diagnosis of hepatitis B and C infection? Anybody would like to answer? Priyanka, would you like to answer this question? Is liver biopsy indicated for primary
ma'am.
diagnosis of B and C infection?
No, ma'am.
Yes, answer is no, definitely correct. So for routine, you don't require liver biopsy for diagnosis for chronic hepatitis B and C infection. So what is the role of liver biopsy in chronic hepatitis B and C is when non-invasive tests, they show indeterminate results, when there is failure to achieve sustained virological response, or where there is relapse of viral hepatitis, or if any additional etiology is suspected, then only liver biopsy is done in patients with hepatitis B and C. So Dr. Sagnik, would you like to add any comment in this case?
No, ma'am, I think these are very standard guidelines which they had updated very recently. Um, in today's world, it's very unlikely that we would require a liver biopsy for primary diagnosis of Hep B or Hep C. Possibly in cases, we've had one or two cases where the serological test came negative. In that case, it was more of finding it incidentally. We were not expecting, we were suspecting more of AIH because the chronic course in these cases may be similar clinically. And the biopsy happened to turn out positive for Hep B staining. So our pathologists do it routinely, although we rarely refer patients upfront for a biopsy to diagnose Hep C, Hep B or Hep C.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Samnik. So now this slide is on hepatitis C virus infection. And these three scientists, they discovered this hepatitis C. Now, after discovery, we have diagnostic serological assays, and we have excellent treatment for hepatitis C infection. So because of all these things, we have not been receiving any biopsies of hepatitis C infection for primary diagnosis. And now I would like to say here that we are quickly approaching the day when hepatitis C liver biopsies are regarded as extremely rare, and they will be presented during conferences only. So this is the scenario of hepatitis C infection. This is all because of this treatment, that is direct acting antiretroviral agents. And this treatment is excellent treatment. So in 2020, I used to report almost every day 3 to 4 biopsies of hepatitis C. And nowadays, I report only 1 to 2 cases of hepatitis C liver biopsies in which the clinicians are suspecting some additional features. So now it is extremely rare to get hepatitis C liver biopsies. Now, last 2 or 3 cases. This was 51 years female, generalized weakness, non-alcoholic. She was on treatment for hypertension, no history of COX, blood transfusion, and this is liver function test. So additional tests, these are serological tests. Patient was negative for viral markers, HBs, AGS, CV negative, but IgG was raised, and patient had ANA 1 into 320, which was also raised. So what is diagnosis and what is expected liver biopsy finding? Who would like to answer? Again, the first slide. Female patient with raised AST, ALT, SGOT, and SGPT. And ANA positive,
Ma'am,
raised
it
IgG.
could be autoimmune.
Autoimmune what?
Autoimmune
Autoimmune hepatitis. Okay.
hepatitis.
So what you expect on liver biopsy?
Ma'am, ma'am, can I say?
Yes, sure.
Ma'am, there will be interface hepatitis.
Yes.
There will be amperipolysis, and there will be lots of like clusters of plasma cells.
Yes.
And there will be also hepatitic rosette formation.
Okay, good. So let us see liver biopsy. So is it that easy to diagnose autoimmune hepatitis with these investigations? And according to me, it is not that difficult, but let us see. So this is the liver biopsy in patient with chronic hepatitis. What you can see here, all features of chronic hepatitis, lot of portal inflammation, and this is showing liver fibrosis, almost dense inflammation in portal, periportal area. As you go higher up, again cirrhotic nodules and inflammatory cells. Again, higher magnification. I don't know whether you can appreciate here, but there are plasma cells. So there is mixture of lymphocytes and plasma cells. So basically this liver histology is showing portal inflammation, lymphocytes, plasma cells. There is interphase activity. There is cirrhosis and absence of steatosis and cholestasis. With this background, we would like to say that this is a case of autoimmune hepatitis. But there are certain things to remember about before diagnosing autoimmune hepatitis. So which are diagnostic criteria for autoimmune hepatitis? Diagnostic criteria, not just the biopsy diagnosis.
Actually, ma'am, there are 4 categories
Yes,
One was, I think, it had to have the anti-nuclear antibodies.
very good.
Then the immunoglobulin G should be raised.
Very
And
good.
then it has to fulfill the categories of the histological findings, means it has to resemble, the biopsy should resemble the histological findings of it. And
Yes.
it has to exclude some other liver diseases like hepatitis, like viral hepatitis and all.
Excellent, Meghaparna. I think your concepts are very clear. So I would like to
Thank
add
you,
up
ma'am.
here is whatever she said is absolutely right. But here, before going ahead, I would like to say that patient liver biopsy in patients with AIH, the biopsy looks like any other chronic hepatitis. And plasma cells are always variable. You may not see excellent quantity or number of plasma cells. You may see few plasma cells or you may see more plasma cells. If you see small proportion of plasma cells, still it is autoimmune hepatitis. So the diagnostic criteria are raised liver enzymes, AST, ALT, liver-related autoantibodies. There are several autoantibodies which are specific for liver, but three important being anti-nuclear, ASMA, anti-smooth muscle, and LKM1, liver kidney macrosomal. So these are three important antibodies. Then raised gamma globulins, compatible liver histology. So whatever we have seen was compatible liver histology. Yeah, here I would like to add one point that you said about emperipolysis and rosetoid. Now with latest guidelines which have been given by liver pathologists, these two criteria have been omitted from diagnostic feature or compatible histological feature of autoimmune hepatitis.
Okay.
So then the last one is exclusion of other causes like steatosis, cholestasis. So all these are diagnostic criteria, but remember that none of these criteria, if detected in isolation, are specific and characteristic to confidently diagnosed AIH. So the AIH diagnosis is always a clinico-pathological diagnosis. And coming to autoantibodies, the autoantibodies, just now we said that ANA, ASMA, LKM1, these are three important autoantibodies. And there are several other autoantibodies also. But it is important to remember that these autoantibodies can be also present in other liver diseases. For example, simple fatty liver disease, MASLD. So fatty liver disease patients can also have ANA positivity. So these autoantibodies can be present in other liver diseases. They may appear later in the course of disease. So initially they may be absent, but later in the course they may start showing up. And it is important to know that they do not predict severity or prognosis of a liver disease. So especially the first point, you all must remember that ANA positivity does not mean that this is the case of autoimmune hepatitis. And hence the diagnosis depends on all these criteria. Now, as I said, autoimmune hepatitis. In autoimmune hepatitis, these are autoantibodies which are directed against hepatocytes. Then you get autoimmune hepatitis. But when you have autoantibodies which are directed against biliary system, then you have autoimmune cholangitis or primary biliary cirrhosis and primary sclerosing cholangitis. These are two examples of autoimmune biliary diseases. So autoimmune hepatitis, PBC and PSC, they are under the category of autoimmune liver disease. So now let us see two examples of these. Again, this was a case of 50 years female presented with fatigue, jaundice, pruritus, severe itching, and her liver function test showed raised alkaline phosphatase, gamma GT, viral markers were negative. She was non-alcoholic, non-diabetic. IgM was elevated. ANA, ASMA was negative. They were negative. Ultrasound, they showed normal biliarity. So any diagnosis here? Again, female patient, AST/ALT not elevated, not much elevated, but alkaline phosphatase raised, gamma GT raised, viral markers negative, and ultrasound normal bilirubin. So any guess over here? Coming with severe itching.
Ma'am, IgM is raised. We can say that it could be primary biliary cholangitis.
Very good. So this is probably a case of primary biliary cholangitis. So what you are expecting in liver biopsy? Meg Parana, would you like to answer? What do you expect in liver biopsy of such patients?
Ma'am, there will be
Sorry?
there will be portal inflammation.
Yes.
Then, ma'am, there might be fibrosis.
Yes. Fine. Variable fibrosis.
Yeah, ma'am, variable fibrosis might be there, and infiltration of inflammatory cells.
Which are targeting which cells?
Ma'am, lymphocytic infiltration would be there.
Yes. In portal areas.
Ma'am, destroying the
yes.
bile ducts.
Very good. Yeah. So here you can see the liver biopsy of this patient, in which, if you can appreciate portal area, which is down, lower part of the biopsy, in which portal area is edematous. It is expanded. This expansion of portal area is because of portal edema and inflammatory cells. This is higher magnification, in which you can see bile ducts which are getting destroyed. Inflammatory cells are destroying bile ducts. On right hand side of the portal area, you can see some of the bile ducts are proliferating slit-like. Here again, in this picture, you can see some amount of eosinophils that are destroying bile ducts. And this portal area, if you see carefully, you can see vein, you can see artery, but I can't see a good bile duct here. So this is disappearance of bile duct in this portal area. This portal area also is not showing bile duct. So these are, and in addition, if you see a granuloma, then with AMA positive, anti-mitochondrial antibodies positive, then the diagnosis becomes very straightforward, is primary biliary cholangitis. So primary biliary cholangitis, the liver biopsy shows varied pictures. That is, some portal areas, they show bile duct destruction. Some portal areas, they show bile ductular proliferation. Occasionally, you may see absence of bile duct. So these are various changes in different portal areas in given single biopsy. And when you have the information that patient is AMA positive, then diagnosis is straightforward, primary biliary cholangitis. Getting granuloma in portal area is not always feature. Maybe in 20% of cases, you can see granuloma in relation to portal area and in relation to bile duct, especially. So this was the case of primary biliary cholangitis, or PBC, which is also an autoimmune disease in which autoantibodies, they are directing towards bile ducts. And this is characterized by progressive destruction of intrahepatic bile ducts. So this is the case of PBC, which is a non-suppurative chronic destructive cholangitis, and AMA positivity is serological hallmark. And histology, you have patchy distribution of bile duct lesion. So varied distribution, varied picture of bile duct destruction. So the American Association guidelines, they have basically given 3 important features of PBC, out of which if you have two criteria, then you can diagnose this as a case of PBC. Biochemical elevation of alkaline phosphatase, presence of cholestasis, presence of AMA, which is a serological hallmark for diagnosis of PBC, and histological non-suppurative destructive cholangitis. So coming to the last, that is primary sclerosing cholangitis, in which extrahepatic or the larger bile ducts get affected. In primary biliary cirrhosis, you have small to medium-sized bile ducts get affected, while in PSC, you have larger bile ducts or sometimes extrahepatic bile ducts get affected. So this is usually seen in 40 to 50 years. However, you can see you can have primary sclerosing cholangitis in even pediatric age group or even in infancy. And these patients, they have cholestatic liver function. And when we call it as primary sclerosing cholangitis, we have to rule out various other causes for secondary sclerosing cholangitis. Liver biopsy may be helpful or may not, but the diagnostic test for PSC is ERCP. And you have strictures and beaded appearance of bile duct in PSC, primary sclerosing cholangitis. This is how ERCP picture looks, and ERCP is the diagnostic. So what we see in liver biopsy, again, we see liver biopsy, various destruction of bile ducts. On upper side left corner, you can see bile duct, which is surrounded by fibrosis that is called as onion skin-like fibrosis. And this onion skin-like fibrosis is sort of a characteristic of sclerosing cholangitis, but it is not seen in all liver biopsies. To get on nice onion skin-like fibrosis in liver biopsy is only the incidence is almost 20% of cases. So on right-hand side, you can see upper figure right-hand side, you can see expanded portal area, proliferating ductules, and lot of inflammation. And lower two figures, they are showing artery, they are showing vein, but no bile duct. So basically in sclerosing cholangitis, you can see all these pictures, almost similar picture that you see in any other biliary disorder. But the diagnostic test is ERCP, is the diagnostic test. So this was the explanted liver, which I have come across, showing expanded right lobe and the left lobe, which you can see atrophied left lobe. On right-hand side, upper corner is atrophied left lobe. And the cut surface, which is lower picture, which is showing dilatation of biliary tree, irregular dilatation of biliary tree. So this was the case of primary sclerosing cholangitis, the explant. Now this is my second last slide. So I would like to say here that autoimmune liver disease, almost 80% of cases of autoimmune liver diseases, they are chronic liver diseases, but there are 10 to 20% which are acute autoimmune liver diseases. But overall, autoimmune liver diseases, they have a lot of overlap with other liver diseases. So AIH, autoimmune hepatitis, can have overlap with primary biliary cirrhosis. They can have overlap with primary sclerosing cholangitis. Now we have so much prevalence of fatty liver disease. Almost every third person has some amount of fat in the liver. So there is a lot of overlap between autoimmune hepatitis and fatty liver disease, metabolic associated fatty liver disease. And hence this we are going to face in future. And right now also we are facing a challenge to distinguish between fatty liver disease and AIH because of so much prevalence of fatty liver disease, and it has a synergistic impact on course of the disease and response to the treatment. So in future, we are going to see such cases where there is overlap of fatty liver disease with various other chronic liver diseases. So I think this is my last slide. So the role of liver biopsy in chronic hepatitis is viral hepatitis with unusual presentation, patients with more than one concomitant disorder, liver disease with unclear etiology, and liver disease in which non-invasive tests are discrepant or inconsistent with clinical findings. And thank you very much. So after all, the final diagnosis is all clinico-pathological correlation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take. So Dr. Sagnik, do you have any comments on it?
Ma'am, I think that was a very fantastic and very succinct presentation of chronic liver diseases, and that in our experience, the management of chronic liver hepatitis, in particular diagnosis as well as management, requires an expert pathologist in today's date and time. We have made some headway in the serological diagnosis of viral hepatitis, so those that part of the liver biopsy we can still avoid. But for things like autoimmune liver disease, even in MASLD nowadays, staging and fibrosis staging has become very important, and we just cannot get away without a good pathological staging. So I think knowledge of this would help all of these students, because eventually, as a pathologist, they would, wherever they go, they would be a part of a multidisciplinary team managing these conditions. So knowledge of both the clinical and pathological aspects are important.
Yes, I completely agree with you. So any question?
Ma'am, we have one question from the chat box. How to diagnose HCV infection definitely from biopsy with serology being negative?
We cannot say confirmatively that this is HCV positive biopsy. Especially nowadays, we have so much of steatosis. I mean, so much of fatty liver. Definitely, I will not label any liver biopsy like this is HCV positive liver biopsy. Dr. Sagnik, what is your view about this?
Ma'am, so I think this would be a clinical situation where you have an occult hepatitis C infection. You would define it clinically where you have serum antibody and HCV RNA negative, where you only find the presence of RNA within the hepatocyte or in the peripheral blood mononuclear cells. So I guess specifically detecting RNA in the hepatic cells or picking them up in the peripheral blood cells would be diagnostic, but this is a very rare thing. Mostly the kind of tests which we have now are, the diagnostic accuracy of these tests are very high. So this is a
Yes.
very rare thing that you find an OCI in a patient. Mostly we find it in our patients who are undergoing hemodialysis because they're, immunocompromised, so they cannot form antibodies against hepatitis C. So if you
Yes.
ever have a suspicion, I think you go for an HCV RNA. In most cases, you get an answer over there rather than on a biopsy.
Yes. Any
There's
other question?
another question, ma'am. If
Yes.
the clinician is suspecting AIH with raised ALT and AST and with elevated ANA, portal tract shows moderate lymphocytes and no plasma cells, and interface is hepatitis, can we diagnose autoimmune hepatitis?
Yeah, just now I said that diagnosing autoimmune hepatitis is not just one point, that is histology compatible. For diagnosis of autoimmune hepatitis, we require all these 3-4 things. So diagnosis is not just presence of plasma cells or presence of interphase activity. Definitely, many pathologists they feel that if we write interphase activity means it is autoimmune hepatitis. No, because when we call it as interphase, that means inflammation is going beyond portal area. Suppose patient of hepatitis B and hepatitis C has severe inflammation. Those inflammatory cells also can spill over into adjacent liver parenchyma. So interphase hepatitis does not mean it is AIH. So we have to say it is the biopsy is compatible or not. So those words we have to use because biopsy is not the only diagnostic test for AIH.
Cells will be invariably present in those types, no, ma'am?
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
In these liver biopsies, like when we are suspecting AIH, plasma cells will be almost an invariable component of the inflammatory cells, right, ma'am?
Plasma cells can be absolutely variable. You may find 1 or 2 plasma cells or you may find plenty of plasma cells. So again, if you see just 1 or 2, it does not rule out AIH. No. Anybody?
I think we don't have any more questions from the chat box. If anybody else has any open questions ready to ask.
Yeah, chronic hepatitis is very, very vast topic. And these are few examples which are there. And again, this chronic hepatitis is not like reporting oncology biopsies, whether there is tumor or no tumor, but these biopsies, they definitely require some clinical knowledge and the correlation of clinico-pathological correlation for final diagnosis. So it is not like a plasma cell. If you see plasma cells means it is AIH. No. You have to have clinico-pathological correlation.
I agree completely, ma'am. We've had cases where the decision, the diagnosis on the biopsy was different, our suspicion was different, and we had to sit down with the pathologist and come to a final conclusion. It can be very challenging at times.
Yes, definitely. No more questions? So should I consider that this is over? Dr. Aparna? Dr. Shreya?
Yes, ma'am. I think this is, we don't have any more questions. I'm just sharing the link for the next upcoming talks and just